My mom secretly funded my cheating wife's divorce lawyer to force us back together. I took the house, cut them both off, and let karma do the rest. My mom literally showed up at my office with security trailing behind her, demanding I forgive my wife for sleeping with a car salesman in our marital bed. So I served my wife divorce papers, slapped my mother with a restraining order warning, and walked entirely out of their lives until a massive widowmaker heart attack forced my mother to confess her darkest, most twisted secret from a hospital bed. Original post. All right, Reddit. This one is incredibly messy, deeply painful, and involves a level of family betrayal that I am still trying to untangle in therapy. My wife cheated on me in our own home. And instead of having my back, my own mother took her side, told me I was overreacting, and insisted I needed to forgive one little mistake. I ended up walking away from both of them. Fast forward 8 months, and my mom is in the intensive care unit asking to mend bridges before it's too late. Here is the whole ugly story. I am a 3-4-year-old male, working as a senior software architect. I've been grinding my way up at a mid-sized tech firm for the past decade, making very good money designing back-end infrastructure for financial institutions. It is absolutely not exciting dinner conversation, but it pays exceptionally well, keeps my mind sharp, and provides a very stable life. I owned my house outright after my uncle passed away, and left me a substantial inheritance of about $350,000, which I immediately used to pay off my mortgage entirely. I have zero debt, a completely maxed out retirement account, and I live a pretty quiet, drama-free life. My wife, Chloe, 32F, worked as an executive assistant for a high-end luxury real estate brokerage. We had been married for 6 years, together for 8. We met through mutual friends at a wine tasting event downtown, dated for 2 years before I proposed, and had what I thought was a standard, happy relationship trajectory. Nothing overly dramatic, just 2 professionals who got along well and decided to build a life together. The first few years were genuinely solid. We bought the house, fixed it up room by room, hosted Sunday family dinners, and took modest vacations to places like Charleston and the Outer Banks. Chloe wanted kids eventually, but we had agreed to wait until she felt more established in her career. Looking back with the clarity of hindsight, there were massive red flags flapping in the wind, mostly centered around finances and lifestyle expectations. She never seemed as motivated to save money or build security as I was. We would spend weekends at home improvement stores picking out tiles and paint colors, and I would frequently come home from a long day of coding to find Chloe had rearranged the living room furniture again, always chasing some new interior design trend she'd seen on Instagram or Pinterest. The kitchen remodel alone took us 4 excruciating months. I did most of the grueling physical labor myself on the weekends, installing heavy cabinets, laying down the subfloor, and wrestling with plumbing, while she picked out decorative brass hardware and imported Spanish tiles that cost 3 times what the functional, standard stuff would have run. Money was a constant point of friction, though I stupidly didn't see it as a marriage-ending issue at the time. I would suggest putting our annual bonuses toward our joint retirement fund. She would want to upgrade the guest bathroom that literally nobody ever used. I'd propose a modest week in a cabin. She'd find an all-inclusive resort in Tulum that cost 4 times my budget. We would compromise, which usually meant I would just agree to spend more money than I was comfortable with simply to keep the peace in my own home. Then there was my mother, Martha, 62F. My mom absolutely adored Chloe from day one. She treated her like the daughter she never had. They went shopping together, had weekly ladies' brunches, got their nails done, the whole 9 yards. They would spend hours on the phone talking about recipes, neighborhood gossip, and home decor. It was actually kind of nice at first because my mom finally had someone else to focus her intense, overbearing energy on besides micromanaging my life. My mom had always been the type of parent to have strong, unsolicited opinions about absolutely everything I did. When I was in college, she would call me 3 times a week to make sure I was eating green vegetables and not staying up too late. When I bought my first car, she spent 2 hours lecturing me about the transmission fluid maintenance schedule. When I got my computer science degree, she loudly suggested at my graduation dinner that I should have gone into corporate law instead. Having Chloe around seemed to redirect that suffocating energy, which I naively thought was a blessing. But over time, this incredibly weird, toxic dynamic developed, where my mom would side with Chloe on literally everything. If Chloe and I had a private disagreement about our budget, my mom would somehow find out, call me the next day, and tell me I was being too controlling and stingy. If Chloe complained about me working late during a server migration, my mom would drive over to lecture me about my skewed priorities. It created this awful 2-against-1 situation in my own marriage, that I mostly ignored because I figured that's just how mother-in-law dynamics worked. My younger brother, Liam, 29M, lived about 2 hours away with his wife and newborn son. We weren't super close. Liam was always the golden child growing up, the charismatic one who could do no wrong in my mother's eyes, while I was the quiet, nerdy ATM machine. Still, we got along fine at holidays. The entire illusion of my life exploded into a million pieces on a random, rainy Tuesday evening in October. I had been working late, finishing up some complex API integrations for a massive project deadline. We finished ahead of schedule, so I got home around 7:30 p.m., expecting Chloe to be on the couch watching one of her reality real estate shows. Instead, the house was pitch black, except for the soft glow of the bedside lamp in our master bedroom. I figured she had a migraine and had gone to bed early, so I tried to be quiet. I walked down the hallway, pushed open the bedroom door, and there they were. Chloe and some guy I had never seen before in my life, both scrambling violently to cover themselves with our expensive duvet. The look on Chloe's face, a cocktail of pure, unadulterated panic mixed with sickening guilt, told me absolutely everything I needed to know before a single syllable was spoken. The scene felt completely surreal, like I had been shoved underwater and was watching a movie play out through a distorted lens. My brain, trained to analyze data and systems, started processing the environmental details in this weird, detached, clinical way. The guy's heavy, expensive Rolex watch sitting on my mahogany nightstand. Chloe's expensive silk dress scattered across the hardwood floor I had polished that very weekend. The overpowering, musky smell of Tom Ford cologne that I definitely didn't own. The Egyptian cotton sheets we had picked out together at a boutique 6 months ago, now wrapped around the sweaty torso of a man who was not me. The guy started stammering something pathetic, pulling the sheet up to his chin like his modesty actually mattered at this point. Chloe was frozen solid, her mouth hanging open, but no sound was coming out. For about 10 agonizing seconds, nobody moved. It was like someone had hit pause on a nightmare. Then, Chloe finally found her voice. This isn't what it looks like. I actually laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. The sheer absurdity of the cliché broke my brain for a second. It looks exactly like my wife is butt naked in bed with another man. In my house. In my bed. What else could it possibly, conceivably look like, Chloe? The guy turned out to be Julian, a luxury car salesman who had sold Chloe her Lexus SUV 6 months prior. He started getting dressed with this frantic, panicked urgency. He was a real slick, smooth talker type, perfectly coiffed hair, a leased BMW parked halfway down the street to avoid suspicion, and that heavy watch on my nightstand. The exact kind of dude who probably had a memorized predatory pickup routine that worked wonders on board, materialistic women looking for something more thrilling than their stable, predictable tech nerd husbands. Look, man, I'm really sorry, Julian started, hopping on one foot trying to pull his expensive slacks up. Get the hell out of my house, I said, my voice dropping an octave, completely devoid of emotion. He didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his Italian loafers and practically sprinted out of the bedroom, not even bothering to put his shirt on properly. I heard the front door slam open and shut about 30 seconds later. His car engine roared to life, and he peeled out down the wet street fast enough to leave rubber on the asphalt. Chloe was sobbing hysterically now, the sheet pulled tightly up to her neck, mascara running down her face in thick black rivers. Please let me explain. It meant nothing. I didn't yell. I didn't throw punches. I didn't smash a lamp or do any of that dramatic nonsense you see in movies. I just stood there in the doorway for maybe 30 seconds total, letting the brutal reality sink into my bones, watching her scramble for words that might somehow magically rewind time and make this okay. Then I turned around, walked into my home office, grabbed my work laptop and my emergency go bag, unplugged my phone charger from the kitchen wall, took my truck keys from the brass hook by the door, and walked out. I heard Chloe screaming my name, her bare feet slapping against the hardwood floor as she ran down the hallway, but I just kept walking. She appeared at the front door in her silk bathrobe, just as I was climbing into my Toyota Tacoma. "Where are you going? We have to talk about this," she shrieked into the rain. She ran toward the truck, completely ignoring the freezing downpour. "Please don't leave like this. I can explain everything." I threw the truck into reverse, backed out of the driveway while she stood there sobbing in the rain, and drove away without looking in the rearview mirror. My hands were completely steady on the leather steering wheel, even though my entire universe had just been vaporized. I drove straight to my best friend Marcus's place. Marcus and I had been friends since our freshman year of college. We survived brutal computer science weed-out classes together. He's the kind of friend who will help you pour a concrete patio in the dead of summer without complaining, and who shows up with a six-pack when your dog dies. His wife, Sarah, is equally amazing. When I knocked on their door at 9 p.m., soaking wet and looking like a ghost, they didn't ask a single probing question. Marcus took one look at my face, stepped aside, and said, "Guest room is yours, man. Beer is in the fridge." I sat at their kitchen table and told them exactly what I had just witnessed. Marcus just nodded slowly, his jaw clenched tight, and handed me a glass of bourbon. Sarah immediately went upstairs, brought down fresh towels, and told me I could stay for as long as I needed, rent-free. That night, lying in Marcus's guest bed, staring blankly at the ceiling fan, my phone absolutely refused to stop vibrating. Chloe was texting me every 45 seconds. The messages were a wild, descending staircase into madness, getting progressively more desperate, manipulative, and incoherent. "Please come home, we need to talk. I'm so incredibly sorry. It was a massive mistake. Julian means absolutely nothing to me. It was just physical. You're the only man I have ever loved. Please answer me. I can't lose you. This is literally killing me." I read every single one of them. The blue light of the screen was the only illumination in the room. I didn't type a single letter in response. What was there left to say? She had made her choice the second she unbuttoned that salesman's shirt in the home I paid for. Around 1:00 a.m. When the apologies weren't working, she tried a completely different approach. She started sending massive, screen-length paragraphs about how our marriage had been struggling for months, how she had felt emotionally neglected with me working so many late hours to secure my promotion, and how Julian had just been there at the right time when she was feeling deeply vulnerable and unseen. It was classic, textbook blame shifting. Somehow, in her twisted mind, my working 50-hour weeks to provide her with a mortgage-free house and $45,000 kitchen remodels had directly forced her to spread her legs for another man. The next morning, I woke up to 28 more text messages and 14 missed calls. Chloe had fully transitioned from apologetic to furious. The absolute least you could do is act like a man and respond to me. "I'm your wife. You can't just ignore me forever and run away from our problems." Actually, Chloe, I could. Just watch me. Update 1. That second night at Marcus's house, I couldn't sleep. So I went down to his kitchen at 2 a.m., opened my laptop, and started making a spreadsheet. Not an emotional journal entry, a cold, hard, practical, data-driven spreadsheet. Assets, bank accounts, vehicle titles, timelines, legal next steps. That is exactly how my brain functions under extreme stress. When everything around you is burning to the ground, you focus entirely on the math and the controllable variables. The house? Purchased fully before the marriage with inheritance money that was never commingled. Legally, it should be 100% mine. The cars? My Tacoma was paid off before the marriage. Her Lexus SUV was financed jointly. Retirement accounts? Mostly my aggressive contributions from before we met, with some growth during the marriage. Joint savings? Exactly $45,000 sitting in a high-yield account that would need to be split. Marcus came downstairs at 3 a.m. for a glass of water, found me surrounded by legal pads and glowing screens, and just sighed. "You know lawyers get paid hundreds of dollars an hour to handle this exact mess, right?" "I know," I replied without looking up. "But I need to understand every single detail of my financial exposure before I walk into a law office. You cannot protect what you don't know you have." The next morning, I hired a lawyer recommended by one of our corporate legal counsels. Her name was Evelyn. She was a sharply dressed, utterly ruthless woman in her late 40s who did not mess around with emotional hand-holding or therapy talk. She was a legal sniper, which was exactly what I needed. "Do you have any desire whatsoever to attempt marriage counseling or save this relationship?" Evelyn asked during our first consultation. "Zero," I said flatly. "I want a clean, surgical divorce. I want a fair, legal split of the marital assets. I want the house protected. And I want her out of my life as fast as the court system allows." Evelyn smiled, a very dangerous smile. "Excellent. That makes my job infinitely easier. Let's look at your spreadsheet." Evelyn laid out the reality. The $45K savings would be split 50 over 50. The Lexus would be sold or refinanced into Chloe's name alone, and I would get half the equity. Because the house was bought entirely with my uncle's inheritance before the marriage and her name was never put on the deed, it was completely shielded. Everything else I brought into the marriage stayed mine. I was looking at losing about $22,000. $500 in cash and maybe a few grand in car equity. It was a remarkably cheap price to pay to amputate a tumor from my life. But then, on day 4 of my self-imposed exile at Marcus's house, my mother called. "Sweetheart," my mom's voice dripped with fake, soothing condescension. "Chloe came over today. She told me what happened. You need to pack your things, go home, and work this out like adults." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "Not happening, Mom. We are getting divorced." "Oh, stop being so dramatic," she scoffed. "Couples go through rough patches all the time. You cannot just throw away a 6-year marriage over one little mistake." That word, mistake. Like Chloe had accidentally backed into a mailbox or bought the wrong brand of almond milk at Whole Foods, instead of deliberately undressing and bringing another man into our marital bed. "It wasn't a mistake, Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Mistakes are accidents. Slipping on ice is a mistake. This was a series of hundreds of deliberate choices. She chose to text him, chose to invite him over, chose to take her clothes off. She is absolutely devastated," my mom argued, raising her voice. "She made a stupid, foolish decision, but she loves you. You are being rigid and unforgiving. You need to go to counseling and move past this. I am filing for divorce on Monday. I'll be in touch about picking up my remaining things from the house once she is served." "You are making a colossal mistake," my mom yelled. "Marriage requires grace. Your father and I had deep problems too, but we worked through them. You are being incredibly stubborn and prideful. Chloe deserves a second chance." She had 6 years of chances to not sleep with a car salesman, Mom. She blew it. "Do not contact me about this again." I hung up. My mom called back 6 times in a row. I muted her contact. A few days later, the real nightmare began. My mother, realizing I was actually serious, launched a full-scale, unhinged psychological warfare campaign to save my marriage for Chloe. She started leaving me 5-minute voicemails, crying about family loyalty and how I was breaking her heart. When I stopped listening to them, she escalated. She literally showed up at my office building on a Wednesday afternoon. I was in a glass conference room leading a sprint planning meeting when I saw my mother arguing with the front desk receptionist. Before I could even react, she bypassed security and marched toward the glass doors, pointing at me. My boss, a fantastic guy named David, saw the commotion, stepped in front of her, and calmly had building security escort her out to the parking lot. David called me into his office afterward, looking incredibly uncomfortable. "Your mother was shouting that you were abandoning your family and having a mental breakdown. I'm so sorry, but she cannot come back here." "She won't," I said, burning with humiliation. "I am going through a divorce due to infidelity, and she has chosen to side with my cheating wife. I will handle it. It will never impact my work again." That night I called my mom. "You showed up at my job? Are you completely out of your mind? Someone has to make you see reason," she cried. "You are destroying your life." "No, Mom. Chloe destroyed my life. I'm just sweeping up the glass. If you ever, and I mean times ever, come to my workplace again, I will have Evelyn file a restraining order against you so fast it will make your head spin. You wouldn't dare do that to your own mother. Try me." I hung up and permanently blocked her number. Then came the massive plot twist that completely shattered whatever tiny fraction of respect I had left for my family. During the divorce proceedings, Chloe suddenly hired one of the most notoriously aggressive, expensive divorce litigators in the city. The guy demanded a $25,000 retainer up front. I knew for a fact Chloe didn't have that kind of liquid cash. She spent every dime of her paycheck on designer clothes and expensive brunches. Her new lawyer immediately filed an absurd motion trying to claim that because Chloe had picked out the paint colors and tiles during our kitchen remodel, she had contributed sweat equity and was therefore entitled to 50% of the home's total value, despite the inheritance shield. Evelyn laughed out loud when she read the motion. "It's garbage. We will crush it in 5 minutes in front of a judge." But I am curious who is funding this suicide mission. Through the mandatory financial discovery process, we demanded to see the source of Chloe's legal retainer to ensure she wasn't hiding marital assets. The bank statements came back, and there it was, glaring at me in black and white ink. A wire transfer for 25,000 from Martha, my last name. My own mother had secretly dipped into her retirement savings to fund a vicious legal attack against her own son, trying to steal half of my house. I was physically nauseous. I sat in Evelyn's office staring at the bank statement until the numbers blurred. When I demanded answers through my brother Liam, who was still trying to play neutral peacekeeper, Liam reluctantly admitted the truth. My mom's twisted, psychotic logic was this. If Chloe's lawyer could successfully threaten to take the house or force a sale, I would be so terrified of losing my home that I would be forced to drop the divorce, move back in with Chloe, and go to marriage counseling to save my assets. My mom literally weaponized my own home against me to force a reconciliation with a cheater, simply because she didn't want to lose her favorite shopping buddy. Evelyn absolutely decimated Chloe's lawyer in court. The judge took one look at the inheritance documentation, the deed, and the timeline, and threw out their claim with prejudice. Chloe was ordered to vacate my house within 14 days. She ended up getting exactly what Evelyn initially projected. Half of the $45K savings and the equity in her car. Nothing more. The day the divorce was finalized, I sent a certified letter to my mother and my brother Liam, who had repeatedly told me I was being too harsh on Mom. The letter was short. I told them I knew about the $25,000 wire transfer. I told them they were dead to me, and that I no longer had a mother or a brother. I changed my phone number, installed heavy-duty security cameras around my house, and completely ghosted them. I heard through the grapevine that Chloe took her $22,500 and immediately moved into a luxury downtown apartment with Julian, the car salesman. Unsurprisingly, that money dried up very quickly. Update 2. It has been exactly 8 months since the divorce was finalized, and I cut my family off. A lot changed in those 8 months. I threw myself entirely into my work and my physical health. Without Chloe constantly draining my wallet and my energy, I had an incredible amount of free time. I got promoted to lead solutions architect at work, which came with a massive 35% pay bump. I started going to a bouldering gym with Marcus, lost 20 pounds of stress weight, packed on lean muscle, and finally started sleeping through the night. I also started casually dating again. I met a woman named Elena, 31F, at the climbing gym. She is a data analyst, incredibly smart, entirely self-sufficient, and doesn't care at all about Instagram aesthetics or luxury brands. On our third date, I gave her the full, unfiltered disclosure about my divorce and my estranged family. She listened, nodded, and said, "I respect the hell out of you for setting boundaries. I'm in." We took things very slowly, but it has been the healthiest, most peaceful relationship of my entire life. Then, last Wednesday evening, Marcus showed up at my front door, unannounced. His face was grim. "Liam called me," Marcus said quietly, stepping inside. "Your mom had a massive heart attack this morning. A widowmaker. She's in the ICU at St. Jude's. She survived the emergency bypass surgery, but it was incredibly close. Liam says she is begging to see you." I felt my stomach drop into my shoes. I walked into the kitchen, gripped the edge of the granite countertops, the same countertops Chloe had fought with me over, and just breathed for a minute. Part of me wanted to feel absolutely nothing. This was the woman who had funded a legal war against me to protect the woman who betrayed me. Why should I care if she was in a hospital bed? But the other part of me remembered being 10 years old and having her teach me how to bake cookies. I remembered her crying tears of joy when I got my first tech job. The duality of grief is a mind-bending thing. I called Evelyn, my lawyer, who had become a bizarre sort of cynical life mentor to me. "I need a reality check," I told her. "My mom is in the ICU. She wants to see me." "Do I owe her this?" Evelyn sighed. "Legally, you owe her absolutely zero. Morally, that's way above my pay grade. But I will tell you what I tell all my clients who survive toxic family warfare. You are the one who has to live with your decisions in the dark at 3 a.m. Can you live with it if she dies tonight and you didn't go? If the answer is yes, stay home. If the answer is no, go to the hospital, but keep your emotional armor strapped on tight." I drove to the hospital on Thursday morning. I didn't tell Liam I was coming. I just walked into the ICU wing, signed in, and found her room. When I walked in, the breath left my lungs. My mother, who had always been this towering, intimidating, loud force of nature, looked incredibly small and fragile. She was hooked up to a dozen beeping monitors, her skin pale and papery. When she opened her eyes and saw me standing at the foot of her bed, she immediately started crying. "You came," she whispered, her voice raspy from the breathing tube they had recently removed. I didn't step closer. I stood at the end of the bed, my arms crossed over my chest. Liam said, "You wanted to talk." She weakly reached a hand out toward me. But I didn't take it. She let it fall back onto the blanket. I have had a lot of time to think in this bed about what actually matters. I thought I was going to die on Tuesday. She took a shaky, rattling breath. I am so incredibly sorry for what I did to you. I remained completely silent, letting her sit in the discomfort. Tech architecture teaches you to wait for the complete error log before trying to debug the system. I was so terrified of losing my family, my mom sobbed. I loved Chloe like a daughter. I liked having her around. I liked that she listened to me. When she cheated, I panicked. I thought if you divorced her, I would lose the daughter I always wanted. So I convinced myself that it was just a mistake, that if I pushed you hard enough, you would fix it. And then, when I gave her the money for the lawyer, "You tried to steal my house, Mom," I said, my voice cold as ice. "You tried to bankrupt me to force me to stay with a woman who let another man into my bed." "I know," she wailed, the heart monitor beeping faster. "I know how insane it was, but here is the truth, the sick, pathetic truth. Chloe used me." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" My mom wiped her eyes with a trembling hand. After the divorce was finalized, she had spent all the money I gave her on the lawyer. A month later, she called me crying. She said Julian had kicked her out because she couldn't afford half the rent on their luxury apartment. She begged me for another $10,000 to get her own place. I told her I couldn't, that my retirement was already hurting. Do you know what she did? "Let me guess," I said flatly. She vanished. She cursed at me, my mom whispered, looking entirely broken. She called me a stupid old woman, hung up, and blocked my number. I haven't heard from her in 6 months. I destroyed my relationship with my actual son for a woman who only saw me as an ATM. And lying here, feeling my heart stop, I realized I deserved to die alone for what I did to you. I stared at her. The anger that had been burning a hole in my chest for 8 months suddenly felt a lot less like a raging fire and more like a pile of cold, exhausted ash. She had played a stupid, manipulative game, and she had won a stupid, painful prize. "I don't want you to die alone, Mom," I finally said, my voice softening just a fraction. "But I am not the same son you had a year ago. That guy is dead. If you want me in your life, it is going to be on my terms, with ironclad boundaries." "Anything," she pleaded. "Please." "Rule 1, I said, ticking it off on my finger. "You never, ever mention Chloe's name to me again. She does not exist." Rule 2, you do not offer unsolicited advice about my finances, my home, or my career. Rule 3, I am dating a wonderful woman named Elena. If you ever meet her, you will treat her with the utmost respect, and you will never compare her to your precious ex-daughter-in-law. Rule 4, if you ever try to manipulate me behind my back again, I will walk out the door, and you will never see my face for the rest of your natural life. Do we have a deal? My mom nodded vigorously, tears streaming down her face. I promise. I swear to you, I promise. I stayed for another 20 minutes, talking quietly about her physical therapy and recovery plan, before leaving. It has been 6 months since that hospital visit. I am happy to report that, against all my cynical expectations, my mother has actually kept her word. Facing your own mortality tends to rewire a person's brain. She is in therapy now, working through her deep-seated need to control the people around her. We have dinner once a month. She met Elena a few weeks ago, and my mom was polite, respectful, and appropriately distant. Liam and I are slowly rebuilding our brotherly bond over beers and football games. As for Chloe, I found out through Marcus's wife that karma hit her like a freight train. Julian, the car salesman, dumped her the second he realized she wasn't walking away from our divorce with $500,000 in real estate equity. Without my tech salary funding her lifestyle, she couldn't keep up appearances. She currently lives in a tiny, cramped studio apartment in a bad part of town and works as a receptionist at a mid-tier dental clinic because she got fired from the luxury real estate firm for chronic tardiness. Sometimes, the trash doesn't just take itself out, it sets itself on fire in the driveway. And I am finally sitting on my porch, enjoying the warmth of the blaze.